The time has finally come, Black Clover fans. Asta, the main character of the series, is about to have his first major battle against an evil wizard. He pulls out his anti-magic sword and kicks some ice. This is the episode that I have been waiting for. An episode that would completely defy everything that we saw from the first couple episodes of the series. Asta would fight a main villain, he'd look really cool while doing it, and I would grow to love Black Clover. What I will say is, the actual truth of it is, I'm still not quite completely hooked on the show quite yet. There were some moments of this episode which looked good, and there were some moments that looked good and could have looked a lot better. I thought that there was a lot of lost potential from this episode of Black Clover. Despite that, it's a very important stepping stone for the journey of Asta as he makes his way in the wizarding world. And I'm not talking about Harry Potter's pad. No, this is the Clover Kingdom, and it's filled with a lot of crazy things, including some icy villains. And we finally get to see our heroes throw down with them in this episode right here. I won't say that Heath was the most interesting villain in the world, as frankly, he didn't stick around all that long. Spoiler warning, they all pretty much get defeated in this episode right here. And you know what? I'm actually okay with that. You know, I don't like big fights in anime series to go on for too long. I'm looking at you, Dragon Ball Z. While I do love that series, I will admit that sometimes the battles can linger just a bit too long, and you find that you're just sort of looking at the same thing over and over and over. What I've noticed isn't a trend lately with these long-running shonen battle manga anime adaptations is that the battle sequences are tending to get a lot shorter and definitely tending to focus on the more epic aspects aside from just the same old crap that we always see. And this episode certainly was one of the more impressive ones that I've actually seen from the series. In fact, I would say the way that Asta actually defeated Heath in this episode was pretty cool, but there was still so many ways that scene could have been done better. But still, before we go any further, let's just talk about kind of the main plot of this episode, which thankfully is very simple. Basically, it's just Asta, Magnuswing, and Noelle battling against Heath and his goons. His goons don't really do anything aside from just like read from their books and back him up, and Heath continues to do what he does, which is stand around, look awesome because he has a scar on his face, and continuously look at his watch because he's obsessed with time. It's kind of a thing for him. So he just aggressively brings the heat, just bringing all sorts of really big, powerful attacks against them, and even going as far as to actually trying to freeze that massive water shield that was created by Noelle, but of course that doesn't end up working, and Magnuswing decides to fight the fact that he is really running low on energy. He's going to get in there and bring that Magnuswing heat. He was definitely one of my favorite characters from this episode, and I still love his overall style of basically being a medieval punk magic baseball player. He always creates these fireballs and throws them like a freaking pitcher, and it always looks really damn cool. It's definitely one of my favorite things about Magnuswing, and what I love too is that he actually decided to come up with this trick where he wasn't actually really aiming for Heath, he was aiming for everything behind him, and Asta was able to take his sword and actually reflect it back, and he sent that huge attack flying right into Heath and his goon's face, and it was awesome and super triumphant. Heath is there, he's struggling, he's covered with fire, and then Asta just comes in like a mad bull, which I think is very fitting considering the group that he decided to join, jumps up into the air and slams that freaking massive anti-magic sword right down on top of Heath. It doesn't cut him in half or even really cut him for the most part. In fact, it doesn't even really act like a sword. It's just a really giant, blunt object. I'm kind of curious if in the manga version it's more violent and they're actually sort of like cutting out some of the more, you know, gory parts of the series, but I don't know. I haven't looked at the manga version yet, but this scene right here was pretty awesome, and it's pretty much that's how Heath gets defeated. Like, that's it. No more. That villain is done. That's all they're going to do with him. And then the rest of the episode is all about Heath and his goons being interrogated. Nothing happens. One of them escapes just by exploding into a giant thing of water. It's magic. You can accept it. And freaking Heath and his goons just commit suicide right there. They don't want to give up any of the secrets of the organization that they're working with, which is looking for these weird magic stones. And this moment is really friggin' hardcore, the way they just cover their bodies in ice, and then suddenly they just shatter into like 1,000 million pieces. insane. And it's definitely one of the more, like, intense scenes that I've actually seen from the series. So we know that there's going to be some very dark aspects to this series, but considering it is fantasy-based, I imagined we were going to see that eventually. But this is definitely going to be one heck of an entry for Asta's, tenure as being a part of the Black Bulls. It was a good episode in many ways, but I do take issue with a few things. So let's just go into the rundown of this episode of Black Clover. The actual structure of the episode was not really terrible. It was very easy to follow, and that was all well and good. But man, some of the execution in this episode just left me wanting so bad. Maybe I've been spoiled by watching a lot of other anime series, and maybe I've been spoiled. Like, I always tell my friends whenever we watch anime, I'm like, One Punch Man has spoiled me. Shows like that, shows that really go the extra mile to make their series look extra special and unique and really action-packed. And I loved the scene where Asta actually defeats Heath. I think it looks really awesome, and they really got the impact behind that right, and like just the feel of that attack. Like, you can tell that all of this massive destructive weight has come down on top of him, and it has nullified any abilities this guy could use in terms of magic. And it's really triumphant. It's a great scene. But it's also from, like, a really wide angle. You don't see a lot of the detail of the attack. Like if I were directing this scene, and if this is the way it was in the manga, I'm not really sure, but, like, I would have done this, I would have done, like, the classic triple angle thing. When you see the attack, like, 3 different times from 3 different angles. Do that with this attack. Give us that wide, give us that close, give us, like, completely behind them. Give us, like, a huge shockwave exploding from underneath them when that attack hits. Just really bring the heat for a scene like that. They could have gone really crazy with it. I mean, they could have added a lot more to the actual fight itself, which was not so much a fight as it was Asta simply just deflecting one of Magna's attacks and then hitting him once with his sword. Like, they could have added, like, I don't know, Heath using some ice magic and throwing shards at him as Asta runs towards him, deflecting it all with his sword. Then he jumps up in midair and does the big thing. Triple angle. It would have been awesome. Still, it didn't completely take away from the episode. I just feel that this is a scene that could have looked a lot better. Look, I know that I am extra hard on Black Clover, maybe even more so than any other anime series that I have ever reviewed, but that's because I still see a lot of untapped potential in this series. It's still very early in its inception, and this is like the first major encounter of the series, which is not even really that major at the end of the day. It's merely an appetizer before the main course that is the next arc of the series. And for that, I really cannot completely fault this episode. And if anything, it was one of the more entertaining ones that I've seen from the series. I really hope they're going to kick it up to 11 just a little bit more in some of the future, because while the action is kind of fun, it's kind of boring too. That's just the only feeling that I really get from this series. That, and I still can't stand Asta's voice. Just, I hate it. Like, I can't make it any clearer than that. Just, man, I hate Asta's voice. I know it's pretty, common online to find people who do not like his voice. It's something that I think a lot of us agree on, but man, I just can't get used to it. Every single time he does it, it can kind of ruin some of the impact behind the scenes. Other than that, other little moments of the episode that I loved, I thought it was great with Noelle, who actually managed to do some other cool things in this episode, like when she just managed to save Magna Swing at like the last second with another one of the like water shields. It's something that apparently she's really good at this point, and I have a feeling she's going to be sort of like the support character of the series who creates a lot of defensive techniques. Maybe we'll get to see more from her in terms of action in the series, but still, this has sort of like helped her awaken some of these hidden abilities, which is really cool, but she's still a real uptight bitch. Like, that's the only way to put it. That's the only way to put it with her character. Magna Swing was also cool in this episode, how he came together and managed to help Asta take out frickin' Heath, which was awesome. Heath was an okay first villain. I'm hoping we get to know them a little bit more, aside from just giving him a random quirk. This guy's thing is he's obsessed with, like, being on time and crap and counting down the time to stuff. It's weird. And the episode doesn't necessarily have a super happy ending either, with the death of the mayor and everything. Like, everything just goes downhill until you see that weird, freaky bird, which totally looks like, I believe it's called a Tailo from Pokemon. I think that's what it is. I think it's either a Tailo or a Swellow. I'm not really sure. It looks like one of them to me, and it has one of the magic stones. We also get to see the other group that Heath was associated with, that's of course hanging out in a dark and shadowy room, because that's just how this stuff goes. And of course their plan is to revive someone, to revive their master. Who is their master going to be? I don't know, it could be friggin' Snoke or Madara Uchiha or friggin' Frankenstein for all I know. I just can't wait to see. What I will say is, despite the fact that I dogged this series quite a bit, I did enjoy this episode, and I actually do want to see more. I am willing to stick it through for as far as this anime is willing to go, until there is a point where I frankly just cannot do it anymore. And it's going to take a lot to do that. I've seen a lot of bad anime. That's a discussion for another video. What I will say is this episode right here was pretty good. It definitely gives us a lot of some of the best highs and lows of the series, and hopefully they'll be able to up the ante a little bit more in the future. But that being said, I thought this was a pretty good action episode. I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. I wanted a little bit more from it. Still, nice little introduction to some of the action of the series. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the episode as well. What did you think of Asta's very first major battle? What did you think of the defeat of Heath? And hopefully what do you want to see from the rest of the Black Clover anime series? Are you liking this show? Are you not liking this show? If you're discussing this with everyone in the comments, don't be a douche. Just be civil about it. Just be respectful to everyone, alright? Let's keep this channel really positive. Thank you guys again for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more anime and manga reviews. Make sure to like the video, share it with your friends. I'll see you guys next time. And as always, stay damn, baby.